everyone, and welcome back to the HCW YouTube channel. That's the one. My name is RateWrestle, and once again we are doing a UK Indie show review. And once again we are joined by Alex Connors. How are you doing?
I'm okay, RateWrestle. I'm okay. No thanks to the show that we've just witnessed, but we'll get into it when we get to my match.
Yeah. So we are reviewing Kamikaze Pro Live 37. I'm having a mare here. And we will get to your match because you were up first.
Before we start, as always, I do like to say what a good venue we were in, because this was a really interesting one. I do talk a lot about our venues and crowds, but this one was fascinating because we had the Kamikaze Pro Dojo opened up for the first time for a Pro Live show, similar to the 10th anniversary show, but a little bit of a different layout. A seated area one side, a standing area the other side, to try and get in even more people than we could for that 10th anniversary show. And I think it made the atmosphere absolutely electric. And it was really cool to have an audience inside the dojo, tight up against the ring. It really was one of those exclusive old PWG style shows, I think, and the atmosphere, in my opinion, was one of the most electric we've had at a Kamikaze Pro Live for a long time.
The atmosphere was fantastic. I was sitting near the back, so they had it set up like an hallway, so the rest of us could go in between as well. But yeah, the crowd loved it. It does help that there's a very cheap beer option as well, which I took advantage of.
And with it being right there in the centre, so I imagine if you were having a night out, you could go watch Kamikaze Pro Live and then head on out still. It was right in the middle of Birmingham, really easy to get to, right next to New Street Station.
Yeah, about 10-minute walk.
Yeah, I think this was, for me, this was one of the best atmospheres we've had for Kamikaze Pro Live since I've been here. I'm really looking forward to hopefully having it in the dojo again in the future.
Yeah, and from my journalism, I spoke to certain people, and they've said they're more than likely going to continue having the dojo shows there, because it just makes sense as well.
Yeah, and I noticed a lot of new fans as well. I could tell there was a lot of people there when I was stood at the back trying to watch the other matches. A lot of people who'd never been to Kamikaze before, who were having an absolute whale of a time, and you could hear them saying how much fun it was and how much they're going to come back. So yeah, that central venue and that really interesting mix of seated and stand-in, hardcore fans and new fans, it was a really great atmosphere.
Yep, and it just built up as throughout the night, all the way to the main event, which we'll get to, because that was fantastic. So we will kick off. So you made your way to the ring. You were supposed to be fighting Maximus Okoro, but Maximus has recurring leg injury, ankle injury. So you obviously said to Karl and the ref, I've turned up. Count him out. Announce me as the winner. Obviously, Karl, in his utmost wisdom, decided to screw you once again.
Yeah, so first of all, let's not miss the fact that I did indeed remind everyone in that dojo that I am the real Kamikaze Pro Live champion right now. Mm-hmm. I'm the person who won that first initial 4 count in that match and should have the belt. And it's only thanks to Karl that I don't. So just like he did last month to Samuel Hughes, Karl, as I was leaving, called me back into the ring and immediately declared me having a match with the Ring Gremlin, a very unusual character who proceeded to go about trying to scare me and play games with me. He used members of the crowd, which should be illegal, in my opinion. And I'm sure the Kamikaze fans were having a very fun open to the show until it got a little bit more physical and I kicked his face in for most of the match.
And also prior to that as well, Karl wasn't even paying attention to you. You had to literally shout him to pay attention to what was going on in the ring.
Yeah, it's no surprise to me that the hashtag KarlOut is spreading like wildfire at the moment, and that is thankfully, to completely unbiased journalism from people such as yourself.
Yeah. And so we'll kick off into the match. So as you mentioned, Ring Gremlin, first time I've seen him live. Absolute, I don't know how to explain it. Guy wears a John Cena t-shirt. It does one glove, one knee, shin pad.
Yeah, it's very clear his attire is made up from things he's found under the ring, found in his Gremlin.
Doesn't speak English.
No English at all. Gets announced just from under the ring and gets the crowd gibberishing along with him, and uses a lot of offense that he's clearly seen or maybe heard from under the ring. Classic moves like Hogan, Cena, Randy Orton. which the crowd seemed to love, apparently.
Exactly. So yeah, he tried a few scare tactics on yourself. Then he got a random person from the crowd, which, no disqualifications, clearly, but with
Yeah.
not against Connors.
I'm sure the match would have been restarted by Karl, but because the Ring Gremlin did it, it was all okay.
Then I really enjoy that running drop kick where the guy is hanging on the ropes because it looks brutal. Then John Cena striked. We're just going to go there. He went full John Cena. And then you cut him off a few more times. Denny decided to Hulk up like Hulk Hogan, as you mentioned. Then you were going to pick up you went for a version of it, and then you went the last shot kind of variant to kick out, pick up. And then Ring Gremlin ended up catching you off guard and picking up a roll up to pick up the win.
Yes, and not just a roll up. As he was rolling me up, the Ring Gremlin bit my ass and sunk his teeth in so deeply, but the ref down by my shoulders, here's me clutching my ass as somebody bites it, which is definitely illegal, protesting to Karl that should have restarted the match, as obviously it should, but no, biased as always, Karl says, that's fair enough, he caught me off guard. And let's not forget, it was Karl who distracted me from that brainbuster anyway, the Shining Wizard to the back, the last shot, followed by the brainbuster that's put away everyone I've faced, really. We were halfway through that combination. It was Karl who distracted me. Ring Gremlin gets the schoolboy and the bite, and apparently that stands. So Ring Gremlin goes 2-0 in Kamikaze.
Which is outrageous in my mind, in my head. But don't worry, he needs to win like 6 or 7 in a row to get a title opportunity, unless he's Karl's favourite. So it'll be next show. But yeah, I rated 2.5 stars. It was an odd experience.
It was the perfect place for it on the show.
Yeah,
a fun opener. Really got the crowd awake with quite a variety of stuff. But there was a lot of Karl bias and not the match I was preparing for. Let's not even forget that it wasn't the match I was preparing for. I was preparing for a hard-hitting match with Maximus Okoro. That's why you saw a lot of new strikes from me. The Gomangiri was a move that cut him off. A lot of knee strikes and shots that I prepared for Max. They're very different sizes, they're very different shapes, and it was not the striking battle that I had planned for. So I was already the underdog because of this preparation that had gone wrong. Then the underhand tactics and the scare tactics and the fun tactics. It was a very different match. But if you were a fan of the scare and the fun, I imagine it was a great way to open the show.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, once again, Karl has fooled someone. First Samuel Hughes, the last time, you this time. Yeah. He's doing a great job. But we will move on to a match between Kieran McQueen and JC. Did you get to see much of this because it was straight after your match?
This is the match I saw the least of. So after this match, I did manage to get by a camera and at some point sneak into the back of the crowd and watch everything else apart from this one. I saw the opening few moments and that's about it.
Yeah, so this, I would say this is one of the best matches either one of them have had. I really enjoyed it. So it started with you test the strength for JC 700 foot tall. So Kieran had to get onto the second rope to jump up there. Then it was the kind of agility tests. McQueen was striking like Gunther at one point. He was absolutely, for the size of Kieran McQueen, he was laying it in. Like the chops were sounding horrific. JC then got in control, doing a few body slams, a few strikes. He even hit a good old-fashioned pump handle, which you don't see that often anymore. Like instantly, I think of Road Dogg when I think of the pump handle, and that's how old that feels. Kieran got on top at that point, hit his penalty kick, but JC managed to kick out, which I was very surprised by. They then went for a few roll-ups. There was it was like a reverse code breaker, kind of into a return code break. It was like they were just code breaking each other. An air raid crash kick out via JC, and then it was like the sunset flip reversal got the Kieran McQueen the win. So the good old like Bret Hart Bulldog kind of reversal. I rated it 3 stars. It was very hard hitting and very smooth from both guys. Probably one of the best matches I've seen from both of them.
Yeah, and I actually will think that that's something we all say a lot tonight. whether it was the atmosphere inside the dojo, but it felt like everybody upped their game. From what I did see of this match, I completely agree with you. It did feel like they'd upped their game quite a bit. The tactics at the end from Kieran, I saw him earlier in that day working on his World of Sport style pins, fast-paced back and forth. So it seemed like that's what paid off for him in the end, especially against a larger opponent. 2 wins in a row for Kieran McQueen. Now, that's not always the biggest news, but for Kieran, he is someone who's very stop-start, and this could be the start of something really great for him, because 2 quite good wins and 2 of his better matches. So yeah, very happy for him, and yeah, impressive from both of them, and it's very exciting to see where they go from here. I don't think the loss is too devastating for JC, as it was a back-and-forth loss, and he is still really new here at Kamikaze, so he'll be just looking to recover and move on from this.
Yeah, and it was a very good match, so he has nothing to be disappointed about. Obviously, Kieran's picked up 2 wins in a row, as you mentioned, 1 against Luke Douglas and then 1 against JC, so like they're big wins. So hopefully he does carry this on, because Kieran does need momentum, because he has struggled previous, and he even mentioned on Twitter this is probably one of his best runs so far, so hopefully he does continue with it.
I completely agree, and I also think not only did everyone step up, but everyone who was there tonight was really looking to make an impact. There wasn't anybody there who was just basically filling some space or someone who's onto bigger or better things. It was more like everyone there was so desperate to earn their spot, because the Kamikaze Pro live shows have become so heated for competition. There was 6 singles matches on this show, no tag matches, no rumble. Those spots, people were fighting for them for their lives, and it was really meant that everyone stepped up their game, everyone put in 110%, and these 2, who I assume maybe people sometimes sleep on, they exemplified it, but so did everyone.
Yeah, both guys really came out well with us. So we'll move on to you would call it the first half main event. So we had Will Stevens, who is being put in a lot of singles competition, which is good for himself. He gets to run the rounds. But he ended up facing Chantelle Jordan, which is the opposite of good for him. So Chantelle is coming off a loss against Edgar Adams, so this is kind of like a retribution match for us. So the exact notes I've got here at the start of the match is Chantelle Jordan is beating the living shit out of Will Stevens. Will then kind of caught back on. He hit a net breaker, which was a really nice net breaker. He was quelling like the momentum at that point. He hit a Uranagi near fall, which was it looked not like it looked grim, but in a good way. Like it looked like it could knock anyone out of that. He hit a choke slam for a near fall at that one, so some pure dominant like strikes and moves. Chantelle then took control with a roundhouse kick. People would know is like the Black Mass Malachi kind of version of it. It was like the nearest of near falls. Like most of the crowd thought it was a 3, but Will Stevens had just kicked out prior to that. And then Chantelle did pick up the win with a top rope suplex, which was really nice to see that got a win. And obviously Willie Stevens is a big guy, so if he's going off the top rope, he's probably not going to get back up.
And I believe she laid in an extra roundhouse for good measure on the way out.
Yeah, so I read it 2 3/4. Straight afterwards, Stevens was like there, and it looked like there was going to be like a respect kind of measure. But no, she absolutely clobbered him with a roundhouse kick. He went down like a sack of shit.
Continuing the theme here, I think this was one of Will Stevens' best matches.
Yeah.
I thought absolutely fantastic. And you know what? I also think this is one of Chantelle's best matches, especially on Pro Live against the Pro Live trainees and caliber of people here. I thought this match was absolutely fantastic. It was so hard hitting at the start. Both looked absolutely fantastic on offense. I do think Chantelle came in a little bit more injured. A lot of the times when Will cut her off, it didn't look actually that big of a strike, but because he's so much bigger and because Chantelle, I think, is nursing a lot of injuries, she went down maybe too easily, and she probably needs to nurse those injuries. I think Will said something about the shoulder injury at some point. So yeah, there was a few moments when they were transitioning back and forth that Will didn't seem to be up to Chantelle's level, but Chantelle looked really battered and went down maybe easier than she would have done had she been at 100%. That being said, when they were in their flurries, like you say, with the near falls from Will, the Uranagi, the choke slam, the kicks from Chantelle at the start, when they were in their flurries, they both looked absolutely amazing. Will really stepped up to this level of opponent. The superplex was incredible from Shan to get somebody twice her size over. And yeah, I thought this was, again, a much better match than maybe people expected, but For me, this was one of the best matches I've seen from either person, and really impressed me.
Yeah, and that's good. And Chantelle's taken a more darker side, it seems, of she's just quite annoyed.
Yeah, we read too much into it being a dark side because she didn't bend the rules or anything during the match. I think it just shows
just
that she's
aggression.
a badass. She's not taking any crap, let's say, for the sake of the YouTube algorithm. But yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, she also on the way out pushed Astor, which Astor didn't even bother to reply back to that. Surprisingly, Astor was non-plus in that match. He didn't get involved at all, which I was very surprised by.
I think that's maybe a credit to Will Stevens, because I think he had a lot to prove in this match. You mentioned he's trying to get out of those tag team ranks and have big singles matches. So if he could get a big singles win over Chantelle without the interference, it would have meant a lot. And he was really close to doing that several times. So I think he, despite not being a fan favorite, wanted a good, clean one-on-one. I mean, against a girl half his size. So, he's not exactly playing fair, but it still would have been a huge win for him. So I think he did what he could to have the best match he could. Yeah. And I was really impressed.
Yeah, it said it is a growing trend on this show that the best matches are coming out from every guy. We moved on to the second half, and it was debut central for the first couple of matches. So we had Luke Douglas, not biased, versus the debuting Coach Mahon. I'm glad my notes auto-corrected to Coach Mason, so I'm glad I just didn't read that. But Coach Mahon, the crowd went wild for Coach Mahon. There was you just felt like hundreds of people were Coach Mahon fans.
Two separate sections called the Mahon section that were almost trying to outdo each other. On opposite ends of the room, they had signs. I believe one of them got ripped up and thrown away. Oh yeah.
This one here. We won't get into that just yet as the spoiler, but
let's talk about, so for Coach Mahon, this is your first match ever on any show in any place. You've got a huge local crowd support. Huge. This was got to be one of the loudest reactions we've ever heard. That means that the nerves must have been triple, quadruple. It's enough to think about having your first match. It's enough to think about getting in the ring with Luke Douglas, even if it was not your first match.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you don't want to disappoint the people who are absolutely rabid for you in Mahon Section A and Mahon Section 1, both trying to be the loudest Coach Mahon section they can be. So his nerves must have been through the roof, and a credit to him for getting through that.
Yeah, so it kicked off with I think he's called the greatest sports coach. Is that the...
Yeah.
So he is a big guy, so he outmuscled Luke into the corner a few times. Then you going for the good old test of strength, shoulder tackle kind of situation where Coach Mahon isn't going down. As I said, he's a bigger guy. A few hip tosses. He was actually in control of Luke for very much the start of the match. Body slam on Luke at that point. He was on complete control. Then Luke took over with a few chops. And then Luke kind of, I think he was losing his way because he tried to, he grabbed a chair. And what I loved about this, it was old school wrestling. He grabbed a chair. I was in the Coach Mahon section. I think it might have been his nan or something was there. She stood up like she was going to go over there. It was old school like wrestling, like flipping. She was going to go attack Luke. I was oh god. And then at that point, Luke was in fully control. The grandma wasn't happy. There was a kid absolutely bawling next to me. Luke was loving it at this point. He went for a super kick but missed. Coach Mahon went for a few lariats, caught them. A strike, he hit a bulldog, got a near fall at that point. Then Luke out the way, hit like a rolling clothesline, hit his super kick and picked up the win. Right at that 2 3/4 as well. But yeah, to this, I don't know if it was Coach Mahon's dad, but Luke was leaving. He thrust that into Luke's face, and Luke just ripped it and then chopped him and then left. And I found it brilliant.
Yeah, there's a few things to this match which I loved and a few things which I didn't love. So the opening I thought was really interesting because Luke actually tried to teach Coach Mahon a few lessons. He actually did a move and he would tell him that's lesson 1, and then he did another move and that's lesson 2. And then that flurry that you mentioned with the hip toss and the slam, every move that Luke gave to Coach Mahon, and bragged about and called a lesson for the debut, Coach then gave them all back to Luke in one string, which was really, really good to see. So he got through that opening nerves. That being said, his initial lockup was not the best, and also his strikes in the corner were not the best. And in my opinion, I think Coach Mahon, which is something that all the Kamikaze 2.0 people have to go through, had to learn to really let loose on Luke. The crowds that see Luke, they see a guy who's in the ring trying to win. But most of 2.0 have trained under Luke.
Yeah.
And letting loose and thinking that you're going to hit your trainer as hard as you possibly can to get that win, Coach didn't do that for the opening half of this match, in my opinion. And it was only because Luke wasn't holding back, as we know he won't, that it was towards the end where Coach managed to fight through those nerves and managed to pick up a head of steam. For me, the opening, apart from these lessons, which I really loved, was a little bit sloppier on his feet. He did look a little bit nervous, and the strikes in the corner looked like he was just holding back. If you were in a street fight, you'd just be hitting somebody with all your force. But very happy that he fought through it. Very happy that he kept his composure no matter what went on, especially with the absolutely riotous crowd he actually was getting. And by the second half of the match, he was absolutely on point and really did himself proud. And just unlucky experience just won through at the end, which I think kind of maybe what we expected.
Yeah, exactly. Luke took this one a bit more seriously. He has in recent times against.
What is going on with Luke? Like, story-wise with him in his head, like, what is he thinking? Because sometimes he's absolutely on the ball. Other times he loses to Kieran McQueen and he sits in the ring after the match looking devastated. Here he just looked absolutely on point, absolutely on fire. It's a tale of two Lukes right now.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty much, I think Luke's that kind of person that saw that crowd in the Coach Mahon section. He's the kind of person when I want to ruin everyone's night. Well, as I said, kids were crying. There was a kid crying literally next to me, as he was getting super kicked in the face and flipping the nan when the chair. I literally thought it like the old school flipping World of Sport would get a knitting needle out. But yeah, no, it was a fun match. We move on to a second debut. So we had Sam Hughes versus Sonny Nos. Sonny Nos, instantly, I just fell in love with him, I'm going to be honest. The way he came out, like live wire, he really got the crowd behind him.
Yeah, love this debut for Kamikaze. Absolutely incredible talent, Sonny Nos. He's so energetic, he's so passionate, he does everything crisply. He doesn't try anything he can't do. We saw a boots and trunks, back to basics wrestler, but everything he hit was crisp, was clean, and was done with such passion and enthusiasm. I, same as you, instantly fell in love with Sonny Nos. Now, he does have a bit of a head start to Coach Mahon. He has wrestled in other shows, smaller Wolverhampton shows, not far from Birmingham, but only 4 or 5 matches there, so he is still really new, and Kamikaze would definitely be the biggest stage he's been on. And he absolutely lived up to it, and I completely fell in love with him. His strikes were on point, and he just hit everything with such enthusiasm and passion that he just loved being there, and he wanted to be there. Same for Samuel Hughes, who has got better every time I've seen him. He was actually being a bit more creative. He tried some things. They didn't always pay off. He did a top rope swanton that did not pay off, but I've never seen Sam go for that before. And I think Sam was really on point, really in control as well. There was also a moment that maybe not everyone saw where Sonny Nos rode a bicycle around the ring and clotheslined Sam from the bicycle before holding the bike aloft with such passion and energy. A really, really fun match. And again, I think probably people might have been sleeping on it going in. Well worth going and watching on demand. I had an absolute blast.
Yeah, definitely a fun match. So Sonny is a very agile guy. I'll mention, but before I forget, Sam Hughes physically is getting his physique's he's doing very well in the gym.
It's the best I've ever seen him every single match. Kamikaze Pro Live for the past 6 months.
Yeah, and this was, I'd probably say, my favourite match of his so far. So Sonny outquicked Sam, which you'd just expect. Then he got caught outside by a post shot, so Sam took control at that point. He was taking over. He was chopping the crap out of him, a few lariat near falls. Swanton bomb miss, if you mentioned. Never thought that was going to happen, and as soon as he was up there, I was expecting him to miss, I'm going to be honest. Then you mentioned the bicycle shot, so I didn't get to see it. I figured out straight away he's done something with the bicycle. So the way you've described it, it reminds me of like the Sanshiro Takagi DDT kind of Hyper Masawa thing, which is nice to see in Kamikaze. He hit a Michinuka driver during this as well, which is just... I love a Michinuka driver.
Yeah.
And then I wrote here, Sam took a bit of a thing out of your book, the Connors School of Wrestling I've written. Well, I've written the Connors School of Healing. So
Yeah.
Sam landed wrong on his leg, so he had to try and recover in the corner. Sonny should be stepping back, but he's trying to get at Sam continuously. The refs tell him to step back. And then Sam eventually, because his leg's healed up, he's took control. And he's eventually rolled up Sonny to pick up the win.
I would love to be angry about this because this was very much a Alex Connors tactic. But what people may not know is that me and Sam spent Friday day together planning some strategies of our own. And so we may have gone over a few ideas. This may have been one of them. Don't want to give away any tactics, but we may have been planning a few things to help each other out. Yeah, to go back to that Michinoku driver, it was a fantastic move, but Sonny just didn't have the power to get the bigger guy up as high as he wanted for that. It was a very desperation Michinoku, or I think it could have been it. Sam played a blinder. He went for the up and over and immediately dropped down. Sonny here was caught in two minds, and that's really what cost him. Because if he'd have been the paragon of virtue and just stayed back, he would have been okay. If he'd have followed up straight away, he'd have been okay, but he didn't. He looked at that injured Sam, he thought about going in, thought twice about it, then decided he was going to carry on anyway, and that's what cost him right there. A great victory for Sam, but the match didn't really end there, because after he'd pinned him,
Sam absolutely waylaid on Sonny Nos, absolutely obliterated him. But then out of nowhere, Nate Riley appeared. And absolutely,
again,
Nate cutted him.
Electric atmosphere from the Kamikaze Pro Live crowd. The roof came completely unglued when Nate came back. Sam, he was just beating down, teaching some respect into Sonny Nos, which you have to do sometimes. And Sam had hit some great strikes, a knee strike, again, not too dissimilar from my own. We've been working on it. He hits a glorious Rainmaker that's all Sam. But Nate wasn't going to stand for that. He rushes in, he hits the cutter, he helps Sonny get up and hit Sam as well. The crowd absolutely lose their minds, and a great way for that whole segment to end, really, because people probably weren't expecting to see Nate back quite so quickly.
Yeah, the crowd loved it. Nate also hit like a version of the Hidden Blade as well, which was nice to see. But it was a jumping version of it. And then, as said, he helped Sonny out to the back. So Sam was victorious, but he still didn't look victorious at the end. Gonna throw out a comment here, because I don't know if Sam will be watching his match on video on demand. Karl was throwing shade at Samuel Hughes, surprisingly, on commentary. So, obviously, I'm a fan of Sam, so I was clapping him when he was doing certain things. And Karl went, look, Sam's got one fan. Just like out of nowhere, all one of his fans.
Look, the pure, unbiased journalism that we see on this channel is being disrespected by Karl Robinson. Karl Robinson should be thankful to the people who have helped prop his show up. Sam is a long-standing member of Kamikaze, and he's had years of service, and Karl Robinson chooses to disrespect him. I think we can all agree. #KarlOut.
Okay, KarlOut, especially because Sam, he mentioned last he hasn't been on the Kamikaze Pro Live poster, so did Karl rectify that for this show? No. But we will digress and move on to probably one of the greatest main events in Dojo. Well, Dojo history, I'd say it's the best main event I've seen.
Just 2 minutes before we race ahead, just to mention there was a moment for Hassan.
Oh, yeah, I've got it in the middle here. I do apologise,
Yeah, this was after the Sonny Nos and Samuel Hughes match, but before the main. Hassan came, and this was actually another moment which I didn't see, so I'll just give some gist, but you might have more details. I was obviously quite invested in the main event and was doing a bit of scouting and talking to those competitors. So, I think as far as I'm aware, Hassan basically came out to help really put over the next generation of Kamikaze. He had Ronnie G and Coach Mahon in the ring. But it doesn't stop there. Kamikaze's next generation, even those guys we've started to see regularly this year, it has such a wealth of people in 2.0. Edgar Adams, Nate Riley, Maximus Okoro, they're the three standard bearers.
Yeah.
And then JC, Coach Mahon, Sonny Noss, those two just debuting.
Ronnie. Yeah.
Ronnie G from last show, and Ronnie G, who's secretly the best one. He is fantastic.
Yeah,
Keep
he's
your eyes
superb,
Hassan Ali basically putting over the next generation and saying to people, keep your eyes on Kamikaze because it's in very good hands going forwards.
Yeah, and there seems to be a tag team coming out of it, which is going to be Ronnie G and Coach Mahon. Ronnie G asked Coach Mahon if he wanted to be his tag team partner, and Coach Mahon said yes, so that seems to be going forward.
You do wonder where Hassan will play here, whether or not he's looking to manage these newer people. I do believe that Hassan's focus has been a bit divergent now. He's been strictly a Kamikaze guy for a long time. I think it's time that he's tried to move on to other places and get up and down the country. So maybe he's not as focused on Kamikaze as he once was. So he might just be here to help those young guys while he tries to get his name in other places. And obviously we've seen that happen with a lot of people. You do want to get your name up and down the country, as well as being on one of the most competitive shows, Kamikaze. So I'm not sure whether or not we'll see Hassan in a wrestling role as frequently, but who knows? I'm curious to see where it'll go.
Yeah, and then I don't know if I misheard. Karl announced Ronnie G and Hassan Ali as the Influence. Is Ronnie G a part of the Influence, or is that just a slip of the tongue?
No idea. I think there's part of Influence trying to spread its wings and leave just this one venue has become also lots of other members filtering in and out. I've seen Influence 2.0 somewhere. Yeah. I'm sure there's a new Influence and an old Influence, and I think that's just those guys trying to get their brand spread across the country. They've been incredibly loyal and incredibly successful at Kamikaze, but for all the years they've been there, they've failed to break into other markets, and I think that's what Hassan will be focusing on, as well as the rest of Influence. So, I'm sure if he's on a show near you, go check him out. But I'm not sure what influence he'll have on Kamikaze going forwards.
Yeah, but it's good for Hassan breaking out. It's good for himself. He does need to do that.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. I think he needs to bet on himself and just try his best and see where he goes. And I believe in him. He's a really hard-working guy. Got a lot of talent.
Yeah. So now, after completely missing that, we'll go on to me hyping the best Kamikaze Pro main event I've seen dojo-wise, period. So we had Edgar Adams, who won the Roulette Rumble at the last show, versus the reigning defending champion, George Lydon. Fake champion. But yeah, so this was a non-title match. But yeah, so under Karl's banner, this is the reigning defending champion, George Lydon. This was incredible. So Edgar Adams is probably one of the only people that probably can outquick George Lydon in the ring. So he did provide to do that. Hit a massive dives. George Lydon hit a drop kick, chops outside. He was trying to show the more aggression, for just chopping the crap out of him. He then got thrown into the post. Then, out of nowhere, George Lydon hit a pop-up powerbomb through a table.
Yeah, a merch table covered in merch.
Yeah.
Some of my merch, which has now been adorned with Edgar Adams' blood. We saw a large gash in the back of Edgar Adams from this moment. And I know those two are friends. They get on really, really well. They know each other really, really well, as this match showed. I don't think even George intended for it to do quite so much damage. I think he just thought it would knock him out and get the pin. I don't think he intended to slice his back wide open. It was vicious.
Yeah, and what I really enjoyed that George decided to, at some points he would have been probably worried about him or so forth when he's done that. He went straight in the ring and wanted the 10 count. Like, he was like, come on, count him. Which is what needs to be done.
That's a show of respect as well, because it's saying to Edgar, you don't have to be pinned. You don't have to take any more punishment. You can just, stay there, be counted out. In the world of wrestling, a count-out victory is not quite as decisive as getting pinned. So I think George would have much rather Edgar took that option. But Edgar, he wants to be Pro Live champion. So he didn't want to take that option. He got back in. He carried on.
Yeah, just in at 9. George Lydon hit a brainbuster, a near fall. There was a few speed drop kicks for Adams. He then followed up with a dive as well, like a monster of a dive. I believe it was George. I've wrote here. He hit a springboard cutter, which is like the variation of the Robbie X exclamation mark for anyone that's thinking the vision of that. And then he also hit a Tajiri springboard elbow as well.
Yeah, there was a moment I was just about to say where they were trading springboards.
Yeah.
Handsprings into the ropes. Edgar went for one. George ducked it, went for one. George hit the Tajiri one after countering Edgar's one that he'd hit earlier. Yeah, fantastic. You could tell they trained together 3 or 4 times a week. You could tell that in the ring, but it really was great for us watching.
Yeah, no, fun. Then he hit a Falcon Arrow. Like everything was coming out. There was Canadian destroyers. I saw a Destino, but it was like the Destino normally lands straight on your back. Absolutely spiked him.
Yeah, and this was George caught Edgar Adams.
Yeah,
he threw him up. I think maybe he might have been going for that pop-up powerbomb again. I'm not really sure. He sort of blocked a code breaker type move. He threw him up. Edgar Adams countered that into the Canadian destroyer and immediately into the Destino, which, like you said, was spiked.
Spiked him, yeah. It's normally flat back, but it was like,
oh, that looked like it was going to be it.
Yeah, and it was like the nearest to near falls. Then they one of them didn't get enough on. There was a lot of top rope cutter, but he didn't get all of it, which cut into a near fall. But then he hit another cutter, Josh trying to hit it out. George then full on was headbutting him at this point. Just use anything you need to win. Went for a splash, near fall because the knees were up, roll up.
So that was George got the knees up as Edgar went for the splash and just small packaged him in. That looked like it was going to be the win.
Yeah, there was like Shining Wizards at this point. He hit a full-on lariat, slapped the absolute taste out of his mouth. George did to Adams, and then he hit a Tiger Driver, which I believe was the winning.
Yeah, so that was all George there at the end. What you listed: the Shining Wizard, the forearm, the slap, the Tiger Driver. Really interesting point for me. If you watch this match and you're a real wrestling nerd, as some of us might be, I think that all the offense that George was going for was old school All Japan offense, and Edgar was going for the New Japan New School offense.
Yeah, think about it. Yeah.
A Destino, a Canadian.
Yeah, Naito. Yeah.
Modern day New Japan offense, whereas George was going for the 80s, early 90s, Kobashi, Muta, Misawa.
The Pillars.
Yeah, and it was a really interesting clash of influence. Edgar's a really new, guy to the world of wrestling. George, I mean, he is really new, he's really young, but he's also done that research. And his favourite wrestlers, the reason he's wearing the emerald, he loves the 4 pillars, he loves those old school All Japan matches. So what a clash of styles it was. And yeah, George got the win in an absolutely amazing back and forth match.
Yeah, and the crowd were on its feet. Like, there was a good 5 minute just clapping. I did rate 4.25 stars. It was very, very good main event. And overall, a very, very good show, and it proves that.
Show. I think when you saw the lineup for this, just 6 singles matches. 2 of them are debuts, 2 of them are 2.0 guys who have not had many matches. I think people would have been sleeping on this Kamikaze Pro live show, and oh my god, I think this might have been the best one that I've been a part of. And if you get a chance to watch it on demand, you absolutely have to. It was fantastic, the whole show, but it ends with one of the best main events I'm sure this country has ever seen. People have got to go watch it, check it out, and come to the next one, especially if it's right there in Birmingham City Centre.
Yeah, exactly. So Kamikaze Pro Live 38, I don't know the exact date in October, but that'll be out, and it's going to be at the Collingwood Centre, which is near enough for me, which is always helpful. I think it's the 13th. That's coming in my head, because I think it's on my week off, which I'm going to check on the calendar here. 13th, so Friday, yeah, it's going to be the 13th. Tickets are now on sale.
We've left a Kamikaze Pro Live show with no idea what's happening next show. That very rarely happens. We usually know 1 or 2 matches that have come from these matches, but as far as I'm aware, unless you know something I don't, there is nothing announced.
There's nothing announced so far, no. The only thing I can think that's going to happen is that Karl is probably going to try and screw you again.
Yeah. Obviously, we know that Karl will abuse his power and be the worst GM in history. That's not going to change anytime soon. But yeah, so anything could happen. It will be Halloween nearly then, so we'll be in for some scares, I'm sure. And after this show, I'm so looking forward to it. Can't wait to get to the next Kamikaze Pro Live.
Yep. So as usual, that's the end of the review, people. Like and subscribe. Check out comments below. Check out previous previews. Go on demand to check this out. It's not out as of yet, but this probably will be out prior to this. But once again, thank you for coming on, Alex.
Not a problem. Keep up the great work you've been doing.
Thank you. And this is a non-biased show. Oh, yeah!